So, we're officially 1 week into the Australia trip. We've seen lots of cool animals. We're sitting here in Cooktown admiring beautiful views on the beach and finding even more unique animals. Well, I say it's time for me to show you what I've been doing for this last week. Let's go look at it. First stop of the road trip. In the rainforest herping. I could have sworn there was a water dragon around here somewhere. Throughout our trip, it was just a compilation of beautiful view after beautiful view. I didn't capture most of them on camera, and the ones I did, I didn't really do any justice to. But here's a little bit of the view of us driving on our way up along the eastern seaboard to try to give you a chance to take some of that in. And again, making it abundantly clear, this was the less good portion of the view. I should have put more effort into catching better stuff. And speaking of catching, this was one of the first finds of the trip. It is a small-eyed snake. We wound up finding several of these guys along the early section of the trip. They were up competing for most found snake. They're a curious little animal. Their venom's not too strong and they're not too aggressive, but they have been known to kill at least one person, and they're very cute to see. They do little mock displays and strikes. Another one of our stops along the way brought us by a JCU field study building. We decided to take the opportunity to explore it. We are JCU students after all, and found some interesting looking gecko sheds here. These are probably the most complete sheds I have ever found of a lizard. Most likely from some type of velvet gecko. I also found velvet geckos on the premises, climbing around. At one point, we took the opportunity to stop where a creek was crossing a road, as we usually do, to investigate for animals. And I looked up on a tree adjacent to a frog I was observing and saw this guy, an interestingly colored house centipede. Back at the JCU field building, I came across this guy. Some species of Gahyra, I presume. I didn't actually go through to figure out exactly what he was, sadly enough. But he's a little cutie. I always find myself going to investigate different geckos and then taking pictures to try to ID them precisely later. This next part here isn't exactly an animal, but it is something interesting nonetheless, actually something that gets my attention probably more than it should. The first time I found this, I looked down on the ground and I saw what I referred to those around me as poop crystals. It looked almost like a pile of poop, but it appeared to be comprised of rubies. And then I looked up and noticed that it was sap, and I have since found it in many different locations. But it's nuts just how crystalline and vibrant this stuff is. It's pretty crazy, and it's definitely eye-catching, and I feel like from the right angle in on it you could probably get some pretty neat little macro shots and things of this. Or maybe even encase it in some resin and make some jewelry. Whatever seems nice to you. I really would like to learn about what kind of tree this is and why it forms this kind of crystalline broken structure. Next up is a spotted tree monitor that I actually got lucky enough to grab while he was running by my feet. This isn't exactly a species that you very often get your hands on. Normally you'll just see them as they dart up a tree somewhere. They're not too rare to spot, but I'd say definitely a fairly rare animal to actually capture and get a nice up-close look at. Luckily I was able to with this guy, and he behaved nicely. Really appreciate your time, buddy. And now he's gone. He's running along the side. They're quick little bastards. This guy was a pretty amazing scrub python. that we found in the rainforest, kind of in the Cairns area. He was real nice and chill, seemed almost like an escaped pet. But you know, pythons tend to be that way, or at least a fair amount of the time. Some of them are known for being pretty grumpy. Carpet pythons can be fairly grumpy compared to others, though I've encountered plenty of nice ones. Some people say that scrub pythons are really aggressive and bitey, but I have yet to really encounter one of them either. A lot of it probably depends on how you work with them. Now this guy here is something that I really think the camera does not do justice to. This is a truly massive, massive moth. Like, just look how big and thick his body is. Like, his wings haven't fully expanded or anything, but his body's like longer than a full finger and as fat as several thumbs. This guy has like legitimate weight to him when you pick him up, more than I've ever felt from any type of insect or anything. Like, this guy's like a smaller rat. It was truly insane. I've seen big moths before, but this guy makes them all seem downright puny. Pretty amazing little thing to just see crawling across a dirt road. This next place here was a spot we stopped to take a swim at. We drove the cruiser as far as she'd go, hopped off, and climbed down to this spot, and climbed up that waterfall a pretty good ways and sat on it. Martin and Peter used that rope swing and swaying into the water. Swung? Whatever. They flopped in. This was another one of those places that was pretty nice to be at, but hard to convey in video just how nice it is. The waterfall is definitely many, many times bigger than it looks. Maybe one day I'll get a drone and I can do flybys of things like this with, while climbing it. Make it interesting. This was just a random place I chose to stop. Well, not exactly random. We pulled over to look through that creek and flip some tin that was laying around. Didn't really find much, but one skink that got away. Then here's a view of one of our campsites to kind of give an idea of what the whole experience was like. It was pretty neat, being so disconnected and driving through no signal and only getting little glimpses whenever you got to town, and setting up your camp every night and just kind of hanging out. This guy was rather intriguing for me and attention-getting, but kind of hard to really show why on camera. He's a roly-poly or a pill bug that's really big, and in my hands it basically comes across. But even he's bigger than he looks, or I suppose as big as he looks, but the feeling of it in person is big, like bigger than a shooter marble. I wish I could have got him to come out and crawl around to really get a look at him, but he was still pretty cool to see like this nonetheless. He almost looks like he's made out of some sort of high-quality stained wood. And while we're on the topic of bugs, here's something else interesting I found that same night. This girl is a mother centipede, and you can see she has her little brood in there with her, and as they develop, you can see these are starting to look like actually curled up centipedes, not just like eggs. And the centipedes are one of the things I've enjoyed seeing in Australia. They get way bigger here than back in the States, and come in a variety of colors. They're pretty neat. You can even pick them up and hold them if you so choose. They pack a wallop if they bite you, but it's nothing too terrible, like you're not going to be in the hospital. Though I have still yet to attempt it, but I have no doubt that my curiosity will get the better of me, or my need for an interesting thumbnail if I ever so choose to spotlight these guys. And now I'm just trying to carefully put the wood back so that we can leave her back in her home. I was concerned about just rolling the main log that I had turned over to find her back onto her, because it may have been able to crush her. So I was looking for a little piece of wood to put over her first to protect her and her little brood. While driving through from one location, something else I found on that first week was somebody rolled over Nissan pickup. So I decided to be nice and have some fun testing out my new winch and flip it back over. Shortly after we flipped her over, the owners showed up and they were pretty thankful. They went and found the other guy down the street that was going to attempt to drive with a chain to keep it over. So the winch wound up being more controllable. They got away pretty lucky too. Their windshield and all their windows are intact, just a little bit of body damage on the right-hand side. Our plan was to continue to drive up the road and find the people that had done this so we could bring them back and everything, because we could feel that the vehicle was still warm. It hadn't happened too long ago, but they wound up arriving on the scene as I stated earlier. Basically, as soon as the camera cuts is right when they were rolling up. It was quite the surprise. Something else we wound up finding during week 1 was this massive white tree frog. They are the largest species of tree frog in the world and are quite interesting in their own right. I'll most definitely wind up giving them their own episode one day, or at least a pretty sizable mention inside a white tree frog episode. Probably a combined one or something. But yeah, the size of these guys is just huge for a tree frog. They're like a small bullfrog. Pretty incredible.
And last but not least, can I get a drum roll please? It is the coastal taipan, a snake I thoroughly did not expect to find on this trip, but was super excited to see. As we were rolling down the road, we just saw this large snake crossing the road, wondering what it could be. Martin ran out after it while I was going to park the cruiser, yelled taipan, grabbed it, and well, after a while we got to this point of filming it. There are all kinds of other colors these guys come in that are striking and impressive as well, but I quite liked the chocolatey color of this one with like his little caramel snout. Just a beautiful snake of a great size and really a pretty personable temperament for being a coastal taipan. These guys are known as being like the second hardest snake in the world to work with, having a super deliberate strike, striking with meaning rather than just moving around and attempting to shoo you off that way like most snakes do. And they also have, depending on how you line up the LD50 scale, arguably the third strongest venom on the planet. LD50 stands for lethal dose in milligrams to kilograms to kill 50% of a tested population. It's how toxins and venoms are generally rated and compared to one another. These guys, as I stated, are about number 3 depending on how you rank the list. And that's tested on mice. They're known to be stronger against primates, so humans. And as tested on mice, they have an LD50 of about 0.99. So one bite from this fellow would be enough to kill you several times over again. And that's an understatement. And here he goes, getting a bit more agitated. I've slowed it down so you can see what he's doing. You can see he never actually opened his mouth or really attempted to strike, but he is attempting to make us buzz off. He's probably rather confused as to why we keep mucking with him so long, when everything else out in the bush knows better.
It is one of my regrets of this trip that I didn't manage to get better photos of this guy. This guy is such a highlight of the trip and an amazing animal that so many people really would like to find. And we got lucky enough to come across one, and in that I didn't take the time to get proper photos of it. But we were being a little bit more careful with this guy than most of the other snakes, doing our photographing on the road and trying not to, manipulate him too much or take many risks out in the leaves and things. But just take a moment to admire how beautiful this snake really is. Just amazing. So thankful to have found it.
So, we'll end this video here, overlooking the bay at Cooktown. Thus concludes the first week. Sorry about this video being a bit more rambly and disjointed than I would have liked it to have been, but I feel like I keep doing that a lot. Missing the mark of what I want to set out to do and winding up with something else. Anyway, I ran a bit late being able to throw all this together, and I hope that despite all that, you still were able to take some sort of enjoyment from it. Well, till next time.
And next time should actually be relatively soon. I've got a lot of stuff to go through that I'm behind on. Well, anyway, as always, thanks for watching.